want to thank Sarah Hotchkiss for coming and giving us her knowledge about this subject, and so we can all have maybe a healthier new year. So I'm going to give it to you, Sarah. Thank you so much for coming.
That'd be great. Hi. How is everybody? It's a good start to 2022, so I thought I'd bring a little bit of information for you today. My name is Sarah Hotchkiss, and I'm the owner of Catalyst Wellness Coaching. I'm right downtown, like a couple blocks away from the library here. So I'm right on 107 West Milwaukee in Studio 107. It's like a hair salon, and we have skincare and lots of different things there. And so it's a good kind of one-stop shop. I have a master's degree in family therapy and then a degree in nutrition, which works really well together because a lot of people that come to me are really stressed out. And a lot of times we're talking about things like stress eating patterns and sometimes food anxiety. I specialize in working with people to reverse symptoms of autoimmune disease, specifically GI disease and significant weight loss and long-term weight loss. I think lots of people come to me after they've tried lots of crazy diets. And one of the questions on my intake form is like, well, what have you tried to do? If weight loss is your goal, what have you tried to do in the past? And usually people have this long list of like all these names of all these things and that they've done. And so I really try to teach people long-term kind of lifestyle changes. So then you don't need me anymore, or you don't need a diet or a program or something that you that you pay for every month or whatever. So I usually work with people around 6 months or so, 6 to 8 months, depending on what they're coming to me for. But a lot of times people are coming to me with some significant chronic pain, like I said, autoimmune disease, a lot of times like bloating and like stomach issues, and then weight loss, or maybe all of those things, kind of mixed together. So when I say autoimmune disease, a lot of fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's, colitis, Hashimoto's, diabetes, things like that. So that's mostly, kind of what I do and what I work on. I'm on the executive board at Basics, and so you'll see me speak there a lot. In fact, I happen to be speaking there tomorrow. So if you decide that you are not sick of me today, you can come tomorrow. That's free also. You can show up. It's right in the community room at Basics, and I'm talking about supplements tomorrow. Supplements 101. I think that's a very confusing topic. Vitamins and supplements, and people, you don't know what to take or what not to take or how much or where to get it from or whatever. And so I'm going to try to keep it simple, just like today I'm going to try to keep it simple. And so tomorrow I'll be talking about just like 5 or 6 supplements that are good for most of us, where to get them from, and how that works. So if you want to hear more about supplements, you can come to Basics tomorrow. I will have recipes that I will hand out, mail just towards the end. I'll ask for someone to help me hand them out, and I'll walk through the recipes with you today too. So then you can take those with you, and then you can look at those and let me know if you have questions about those, because maybe they look a little bit different than maybe something you've been making at home. So I will welcome interaction today and questions as long as it's on topic. I'll probably have you guys work together a little bit on a couple things kind of towards the end. But if anybody has questions as we go, let me know, okay? All right, great. So the topic for today is whole foods diet. I like to even call it a whole foods lifestyle, but when people come to me and they're working with me on reversal of disease symptoms or significant weight loss or whatever, we ditch the whole kind of diet word and we just work on, healthy whole foods. And so if you come to work with me, no matter what you're coming for, my approach with you will be a whole foods diet. And I think maybe this needs some clarification too. I think a lot of times maybe we don't know what that means either. And so that's what I thought we'd talk about a little bit today. So I guess to start, can someone give me an example of maybe a handful of whole foods?
Beans.
Okay.
Vegetables.
Vegetables. Yeah, all the vegetables, really. Fruits, all the fruits. Yep.
Whole grains.
Mm-hmm. To a point, depending on maybe how they're kind of in stuff, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
I was saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Grains.
Yeah.
Seeds.
Yeah, so I would say like a bowl of oatmeal with like rolled oats would be good to go. whole grains in a cereal or a cereal bar, maybe not so much. So that's what I'm going to talk about the difference about, is like, how can we kind of go back to basics and go back to nature and eat foods in the rawest form possible, that's functional. Unprocessed, right. That's all what this is. It's just unprocessed foods. I guarantee you will not overeat unprocessed foods. I have never had anybody in my office that said, oh my gosh, Sarah, last night I ate so much chicken breast. I just couldn't stop. No one does that, I mean, and maybe if you go to an apple orchard, you eat a couple apples or, but do you really ever sit down and eat a dozen apples? Or I eat so much celery, like I just can't stop eating celery. Like no one, you don't do that. So that's part of the reason to switch to a whole foods diet is because you are less likely to overeat all that stuff. And then there's so much good like vitamins and minerals and nutrition that you're getting out of whole foods that you're not getting out of all the things that say they're fortified with all these vitamins, but it's really not the same. So I try to have people shoot for this sort of 80-20 approach, where 80% of your diet, is whole foods, some of the foods that we were just talking about, and then maybe 20% is your cake that you have at your niece's birthday party, or your, thing when you go out to eat, or stuff like that. But that most of the time, most of the days, you're eating whole foods. There's one kind of group of whole foods that no one mentioned that I'm wondering, what do you think we're missing? Nuts are good.
Leafy greens.
Yes, meats. Yeah, meats, fish, poultry. And so getting those in their most natural state too. So shrimp, fish, turkey, chicken, beef, pork. Everybody forgets about pork sometimes when I'm talking with people. Like pork is great too. I don't mean like a pound of bacon, but you know what I mean? Like a pork chop, like eat a pork chop. Yeah.
So would corn and beans out of a can be considered a
Yeah, so I like to think of things kind of in this level. I mean, so we're in Wisconsin, so you can't always get all that stuff fresh, right? But I like to say fresh and then frozen and then canned would be my preference for like how we eat things. When I make chili, I just made chili last week. One of the ways that I make chili is I start with my like grass-fed ground beef. And then tomatoes, and then I put in, much to my kids' chagrin, tons of vegetables in there. So like red peppers and tomatoes, carrots, zucchini. I don't do pasta. Sometimes I'll do potatoes. And I do like 1 can of beans, kind of for the whole, So yeah, I don't really have an issue with beans. I think ideally in a perfect world, I don't know if lots of us have time to do this, but you would buy the beans dry, lentils, chickpeas, beans, and then you would soak them overnight. That is easier on digestion than the ones that are in the can. But like realistically, yeah, you may not do that. So yeah, beans are good. Corn, I love, like sweet corn season, like fresh corn. If you can get fresh corn, that's ideal too. I would say frozen then canned. Canned I put at the bottom because most often it's canned in like sodium and some additional preservatives and whatever. I mean, you can find some pretty clean brands, but still fresh is best. So if you think of that, and if that's one of the things, when you leave here today, you can remember just if you can stick with fresh and in season. So one of the things that I do a lot of times is try to go to the farmer's market and load up on the fresh in-season veggies or fruits, and then we might just freeze a whole bunch that we don't use, like your strawberries or peaches or things like that. And a lot of times it's very cost efficient there to get stuff at the farmer's market, and then you can freeze whatever, chop and freeze whatever you don't use. So, but yeah, those would be kind of whole foods. So we're kind of like going back to the way maybe we ate like 50 or 100 years ago, if you think about it. So when I say like farm to table, cooking and eating, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about your basic, like where we had like a pot roast and some potatoes and some green beans from the backyard. Like that's what I'm kind of talking about. Yeah.
So what's your take on, because we live in Wisconsin, we don't have fresh vegetables and fruits in the wintertime. I had heard that when they start shipping in the fruits and the vegetables to like Wisconsin, they lose a lot of the nutritional value, therefore then the frozen would be better than the fresh. What is your take on that?
Yeah, so that's kind of back to my like farmer's market example. So that's why I try to go to the farmer's market and buy what's local and fresh and then freeze it myself to kind of avoid that. Because I don't know if I've heard that too. And I don't know if we like know that. We don't know where our stuff's like coming from. So I try to go local first, like all the time. That's why I live at Basics. Amber can tell you I live at Basics. So hi, it's me again. I'm getting out my cart full. But because Basics has local or an organic produce, and they put tons of energy into making sure that that's where their produce is coming from. So if you go down the produce aisle at Basics, there's even like labels of where everything came from, and I love that. You know, the carrots come from Evansville, or I love the microgreens that are there like recently, like those are good, but like I know where everything's coming from, and so I know it hasn't been on a truck from California or whatever. And if it's not local, then I know it's organic, because they either do local and or organic, and so that's what matters to me. So that's where I get my produce, that or the farmer's market, primarily. So, yeah. So we're going back to kind of like, we're going like old school, like farm to table, like, kind of eating like that. And so if any of you can remember how you grew up eating or what you had for dinner, I guess a couple examples there. What were people eating for dinner or supper at night? Do you remember?
Vegetables out of the garden, or my grandparents had a farm up by Monticello, so
Okay.
it was,
Yeah.
chickens that they killed themselves,
Yep.
pigs that they would butcher.
Mm-hmm.
They had a big garden.
I have a question. I know some people do canning. Is that healthy?
Yeah, canning would be great if you're doing it yourself. Yep, I think that's great. Yep, because then you can control what goes in that can, when you put it. Yeah, I love canning. I've never canned myself. It seems like really putsy to me, but I love the idea of it. So, even when
There's nothing more exciting than having the can go pop.
pop, yeah. My mom used to. Yeah, it's just, I think it's like a lost pastime a little bit. Like canning's great, yeah. I'm more likely to just, like when we get tomato, I just like chop them in quarters and throw them in the freezer. Like I don't blanch them, I like quick and easy, like, yeah, tomatoes, green beans, all that stuff.
So you don't lose anything when you freeze, because I freeze corn, I get corn from Skelly's and I cut out the cob.
Right.
Apples from the apple orchard.
A little bit, but not worth like splitting hairs
Yeah,
over.
so
No, it's great.
I freeze my applesauce,
Yep.
I freeze everything.
Yep.
I don't can at all, just
Yeah.
freeze.
Yeah, I just freeze too, because it's just easier for me, and so yeah, we do that. There's only a couple things maybe that don't, like I'm not gonna freeze cucumbers, those don't, hold up or anything, but like most veggies and fruits are great and so then that's when I use in all my winter like soups and chilies and stuff like that, as long as we can. I always underestimate how much we're gonna need through the winter though, and then around about February or March, I'm like, oh my gosh, we have no corn, we have no tomato. It always seems like so much when you put it in the freezer, and then of course you start cooking and doing all that stuff, and then there's nothing left. So
I actually have a little handout from Basics, and one of them is food preservation. I have a
perfect.
stack of handouts
Amber,
for
yeah.
after class, but if you're specifically interested in preservation, it's got some
perfect.
references.
Okay, great. We'll hand that out then too. Okay, that'll be good. So just to make sure we didn't miss any. So fruits, vegetables, fresh, frozen, canned, generally, unless you're canning it yourself. Chicken, so whole chicken or chicken breast or chicken thighs over chicken nuggets. So that's kind of like the difference. It seems obvious, but chicken nuggets, then we're adding breading and flavorings, and I'm not really sure, honestly, what's in a chicken nugget, but a baked potato versus potato chips, okay? In the list of snacks, though, let me just be like, I'm a potato chip fan, but like in the list of snacks to have, honestly, I'd actually rather you have a potato chip or a sweet potato chip than like a Cheeto or Dorito or whatever, because most of those are just like 2 ingredients, like especially depending on where you get it from, potatoes, sea salt, olive oil, boom. Like, so if you're gonna have it's so hard not to eat the whole bag though. Like that's the issue. So baked potato over potato chips, right? Fresh berries, strawberry Pop-Tart. So, I do have people that say, like, I'll say, well, do you have fruit for breakfast? Oh yeah, I have fruit every day. And then they talk about their fruit bar, their fruit Pop-Tart, their fruity cereal, or, no, not that, like actual fruit. So you see what I'm saying? Like getting back to like just the actual fruit and not the thing that was like inserted into the ingredient to make it yummy. A blueberry smoothie, which we can make with like, I put smoothies regular in my meal plans with people. I design meal plans for people regularly, and so I put smoothies in there every day because they're just like quick and easy, and you can get a lot of nutrition in there. So then you're talking blueberries, maybe some sort of yogurt if you wanted, some fresh fruit, as opposed to maybe a blueberry slushy from Stop and Go, like That's not really blueberry, but it's like the flavored things, the things that are blueberry flavored, strawberry flavored. Rule of thumb too, if you are shopping and if you're buying whole foods, then most of that shouldn't be in a package, or let's say 80% of it. If you are buying stuff in a package, look on the back. How big is the ingredient list? Is it like this or is it like that? And that's like, I don't even read the back of something if it has like a long list. I honestly just like put it back. So I try to shoot for 5 ingredients or less, with the exception of like salt and pepper or whatever. And so again, just kind of keep it simple. So plus that's a lot of work to read all those ingredients. And sometimes, if I don't know what half of it is, then I put it back. So eating more whole foods is really your best avenue to long-term lifestyle health. So we talked about vegetables, fruits, whole grains, nuts, seeds, beans. People forget about seeds sometimes. Like we talk about nuts like pecans and walnuts and pistachios, but we don't talk much about like sesame seeds, sunflower seeds, pine nuts. Some of those are a little bit different. So those are I do a lot of flax seeds in our house, and we do a lot of raw pumpkin seeds. So those are the 2 seeds that I eat, quite a bit too. But then there's great things like in your whole foods, there's like lycopene in your tomatoes, So I'd rather have you eat fresh tomatoes or tomatoes that you canned yourself versus Campbell's. Like that would be maybe a comparison there too. So yeah. Any questions? So about a third of us get too little vitamin C. About half of us get too little vitamin A. And most of us get too little magnesium. When I work with people on supplements, which I'm talking about tomorrow at Basics, magnesium is huge, and that's one that all of us are probably short on. And so I have people that come with things like restless leg syndrome, digestion issues, headaches, all of that is like a potential like magnesium shortage. And so, but all of those things will improve your health. But a lot of us are low in all of those things. And so, then the next question is, well, okay, how do I make up for this nutrient shortage that most of us have? Our food and our crops are processed so much differently than they were 50 to 100 years ago. And that's the issue, is that, and we can't go back. So we can't go back 50 or 100 years ago and go get your veggies from your, backyard. And some people have that, and it's great. But a lot of us don't, and so then what's the next best thing? So 2 words, whole foods. So if you can get your foods in a whole food source, that's the best thing that you can do. So when I work with people on whatever they come in with, people make goals with me and they'll say like, fitness, or I want to sleep better, or I want to decrease my anxiety or whatever. But I start only with whole foods with them, and we don't address anything else for months, honestly. If I can just get people eating whole foods, usually most of those other things kind of take care of themselves. So whole foods definitely number 1. Good fats. If you're eating a diet in whole foods, you're going to get some nice good fats. Like we haven't talked about avocados yet, but avocados are great. Nuts and seeds. The oils that I prefer people to cook with are olive oil. I really love, you can cook with it. It does decrease some of the health effects like when you heat it, but I love an extra virgin olive oil for drizzling, like over a salad. I would nix all of your packaged salad dressings, your ranch, I know ranch is amazing, Thousand Island, whatever, and honestly just get a really good quality extra virgin olive oil and a good vinegar and make a good vinaigrette. I'm gonna make a plug for Bodacious Olive downtown. That's one of the favorite places. I love to get really good quality olive oil and vinegar. So take my kids, you can do testings, you can, taste, and they have lots of fruity ones. They have like strawberry vinegar and peach, and so when you're making salad dressings, that's good too. But yeah, good fats. So avocados, nuts and seeds. And then yeah, cooking. I like olive oil for drizzling raw. For cooking, this may surprise you, one of the things that I really like is bacon fat. So that probably is not something that you've heard from someone else in the nutrition realm. But that's back to basics too. That's your rendering like bacon fat. My great grandma used to make us pancakes in the morning, fried in, lard and bacon fat. Now, I'm not talking about putting a cup in there, but I'm just talking about enough to coat the pan. Coconut oil would be probably my first choice, and then probably like some sort of natural fat would be my other. So you cook with solids, drizzle with liquids. So if you can remember that too, I think that's helpful. So an extra virgin olive oil is the best for you when it's raw. Doesn't mean you can't cook with it. It's just not quite the same. So cook with solids, coconut, bacon fat, and drizzle with liquids. Yeah.
Can you buy bacon fat at the store, or do you have to cook the bacon to get the bacon fat?
So I know Basics has duck fat. So I use that for like French fries and vegetables. You guys don't have, I don't think I've ever seen bacon.
We've had lard on and off.
On and off.
Currently, I think we do not.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can't speak to whether or not like
So what exactly is
Solar
lard?
Woodlands has it.
Is that any animal?
That's usually an rendered animal fat. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's pork, actually.
It's usually it's pork.
It's
Yeah.
pork and tallow is beef.
Beef, right, right.
Beef
I
and
think
lamb,
when
actually.
people say lard, like usually we think of it as animal fat, but like technically it's pork. But yeah, but any of those would be great. So
Sorg's has
you're right.
good lard.
Sorg's does.
Yeah,
You're right. You're
Sorg's
right.
has really good lard.
Right,
I
right.
use bacon fat and lard to
Yeah,
cook
yeah.
with and
Yeah.
coconut oil. So
So
What about Crisco?
so
Is
that's
that
a
a
vegetable
vegetable?
oil. So that's what I would replace your Crisco, because that's a more processed vegetable oil. I would replace that with one of the ones that we were just talking about. I honestly,
Even though it's vegetable as opposed to
I-
animal.
the vegetable oil, any of the industrial seed oils like canola, soy, corn oil, those are the ones I would say not to use. So I know sort of back in the, I want to say like 20 or 30 years ago when like extra low fat was the way to go when we were talking canola and all these like vegetable oils, and I think people are afraid of beef or meat or whatever. And again, I'm not saying you need to eat like 2 pounds of beef a day. I'm saying let's get your foods from the most natural source possible. And I would rather you use tallow or duck fat or lard than like a Crisco or a canola oil or a soy oil or vegetable. Those have all been, you're getting those from a factory. Those are all from a factory. So, yeah. So it's a little bit of a different switch for us, I think, to like think through that. I have not seen it other like local stores that sell lard, but I'm not sure if it is. We just end up like, I just cook bacon and then drain it and then we use it. And again, I'm not using a lot. I'm not saying you need to like, I'm not saying fry everything, like deep fat fry stuff. I'm not saying that at all. But, you know, a couple teaspoons of like a bacon fat or a duck fat in your pan, and then you saute some fresh vegetables, especially if you're eating lots of vegetables, that's fantastic. Also, having a little bit of fat with your vegetables, especially things like kale and green beans and broccoli, helps you digest them better. So just a little bit. So everybody's gonna walk out of here and be like, Sarah told me to fry stuff in bacon fat, but yeah, it's just when you're thinking of like, what should I, eat, or like, if you go home and start looking at your pantry when you get home, just think of like, could I have gotten this from a farm or somebody on the side of the road, or maybe Basics, or was it, how did it get to me? You know what I mean? Was it from a factory or was it from a farm? So did you?
Is this going to be good for high cholesterol also?
Which, all of these? This diet? Absolutely. So let me speak to that a little bit. When I work with people, one of the things we do in the first 2 weeks is I get all their blood markers. And so I get a lipid panel from everyone. And specifically, I look at their HDLs, which is their good cholesterol, which we want to be, 50 or 60 or up. Triglycerides, we look at that. We want that to be 150 or below or so. Here's another thing you're going to be like, what? Your total cholesterol does not really matter that much. My total cholesterol is almost 250, which is like technically borderline high. You want your HDLs and your triglycerides to be on a ideally 1-to-1 ratio. 1 to 3 is even the cutoff. So 1 being your HDLs and up to 3 meaning your triglycerides. So like 50 to 150 would be like the cutoff, or where I would say is great. My HDLs and triglycerides are actually even below 1.1. Like my profile is fantastic, but my total cholesterol shows high. But I know that doesn't matter. So the marker for inflammation for a lipid profile is low HDLs and or high triglycerides. So if you can nail those, or if you can look at what your blood work is, from your chart, if you can get those in a 1-to-1 up to 1 to 3 ratio, you're good to go. The rest of it doesn't matter. We need cholesterol for the rest of our functions in our body. You don't want your cholesterol to be 130 or 140. You want it to be, upper 100s is fine, lower 200s, but your total doesn't matter as much as those. Those are the two inflammatory markers. So when I work with people, I get things like lipid panel for sure, blood pressure. I work with people on lowering their blood pressure. A lot of people are on blood pressure lowering medications when I start with them. And honestly, one of the issues I've had is that when we start eating whole foods, their blood pressure goes down so fast, and then they're still on their medication. Then they're like, I'm dizzy, so then I have to have them consult with their doctor and talk about like cutting a pill in half, or I have them get a cuff and like measure their blood pressure so they have some data to go into their doctor with and say, hey, and if you're not used to having low blood pressure, I'm used to having really low blood pressure. I'm used to being, kind of dizzy all the time and whatever. But if you're not used to that, it kind of is a little freaky, So blood pressure I get. And then for people specifically with like autoimmune disease, I get C-reactive protein, it's called, and A1C, and some other just kind of like inflammatory markers, white blood cell counts and stuff like that. What I like to do is compare and contrast people 3 to 6 months in and just see, because it's nice to see in the numbers when you can see your triglycerides going down or HDLs coming up. The supplements that we're talking about tomorrow, one of them is an omega-3. And so lots of us don't eat enough fish or fatty fish, or it's not, we're not, I don't know, I'm not like home eating cans of sardines or whatever. Like I think they're gross, but they're really great for you. I think they're gross, so I don't eat them. So a really good omega-3 supplement is really good for increasing your HDL in particular. Also really good for like brain and cognitive function, things like dementia, attention deficit disorder, anxiety, things like that. So, I'm a little bit more of a data geek than probably most people, but like I've had my omega-3 and 6 levels checked too, because I wanted to make sure that I was getting lots of omega-3 and things like that. So, but yeah, it's good. A whole foods diet, you're not going to go wrong with a whole foods diet across the board for a lot of health things. Obviously, if you were to come to me, I would work with you individually, and depending on, I'd see what you like, or if there's anything you're allergic to, or, how you like to eat, and kind of maybe clinically how you're presenting or what your, issues are, and, I would adapt that, but it would all be kind of whole foods, whatever it is. So, any other questions? Fiber, talked about fat, let's talk about fiber. I'd rather have you get your fiber from your fruits and vegetables than your Fiber One bar or your cereal, because that's infused with fiber. That sometimes is infused with types of fibers that bother our GI system and bloated. So I am particularly sensitive to a lot of those. I call them pretend fibers, but things like psyllium husk and inulin, and they put like additional fibers in these bars and these cereals to hold them together and make them look pretty and make them sort of, I want to say, like attractive in your mouth, like crunchy or like whatever the texture is. But I'd rather have you get those from fruits and vegetables or a bowl of oatmeal or something like that. Fiber helps your GI tract. It'll help with reduction of heart disease and good cholesterol that we were just kind of talking about. And most of those processed and junk foods either are void of fiber, if we think like white bread or things like that, or they're infused with these chemicals or like these binders that aren't really, they're not real fiber. Like I'd rather have you get that from, like I said, a fruit or a vegetable. So fat and fiber are important with whole foods too. If you are eating foods as nature made them without the added tons of fat, sugar, sodium, you'll just be in better shape. And so this is what I mean, like cut the sauces. And you don't have to eat bland food, and that's why I brought recipes for you, because you're like, well, what's left? Like, what am I supposed to eat? You don't need to eat like a plain boiled chicken breast. That's not what I'm talking about. That's boring. But I'm talking about your condensed soups, like your cream of mushroom soup and your cream of chicken soup. And I know those are like easy traditional recipes in a crock pot where you throw pork chops and cream of, your creamy soups in there and then let it cook and then eat. I'm talking about your flavoring packets, your ranch, your salad dressings, condensed soup, sauces, kind of all that stuff. I try to give people a handful of recipes of how to make some of that stuff themselves. Or, like I said, you go down to Bodacious and get a really good olive oil, a couple vinegars, mix it together, and then that's what my cabinet's full of now. My kids pick out what vinegar and oil they want, and we don't buy a lot of packaged, salad dressings, or if we do, it's from Basics, where I know the ingredient list at least is short. Salad dressings especially are filled with like soybean oil, canola oil, corn oil. Those are just those filler like processed oils. And so I'd rather it's really hard to find salad dressings that have olive oil in them. Can you think of any brands at Basics that have the olive oil?
Oh, dressings with an olive
I
oil
think there's some with
base?
olive oil base. Yeah, but some are, yeah.
I know, Primal Kitchen is avocado.
Primal
oil
Kitchen is
base.
probably my favorite.
Those are delicious.
Yeah.
Oh, and I wanted to mention too, herbs.
Oh
Herbs
yes,
are a
herb.
whole
Yeah, that was
world,
my
and
next.
there's
Yeah,
a whole world.
herbs and spices. There's a whole world of like herbs and spices, and so when you cook with things, you could go crazy on herbs and spices. No limits as far as there, unless you have an autoimmune disease and you are sensitive to like nightshades or something, that we might pull some of those like pepper and tomato-based spices. But other than that, yeah, lots of different things. There's a good like sriracha or like some of that stuff. So again, but if you look on the back and there's just a couple things in there, that's a good, that's a good way to go.
What about dairy?
I have mixed feelings on dairy. So, do you have a cow at home? Yeah, we haven't talked too much about dairy or eggs. I love eggs. There's a lot of people in the world who have egg sensitivities. I'm one of them, so I a lot of times test for that. That's the other thing I work with people on is like food sensitivities. I don't put eggs in, I try not to put foods in good or bad categories at all, but I think eggs are great. I think a lot of people have sensitivities to eggs, so I like to test for that and just see. Dairy. If you have a cow, yes, I love the idea of like milking a cow and drinking some raw milk, and like now we don't do that anymore, Lots of people are sensitive to dairy. From a digestion perspective and an inflammation perspective, when I do meal plans, I cut out dairy completely, actually, for most people to start. Because, again, most people are coming with lots of inflammation, whatever. I think that if you don't have a sensitivity to dairy, and you don't know till you pull it out for a couple months, but I love the idea of raw milk if you can get your hands on it, or, a plain Greek yogurt, potentially, that maybe put fruit on, or maybe a little honey or maple syrup, something like that. I love cheese. It just doesn't, just doesn't love me. But is it? I wouldn't say it's the end of the world if you get like a nice hard Parmesan, or I love like an 8-year-old like sharp cheddar, because you get a lot of flavor for that, and you don't have to use a lot. And maybe you're sprinkling that over, over things. But I usually have people cut back on dairy, at least initially. Just because our dairy's overprocessed too. It's not, like I said, that's why I asked you if you had a cow. So ideally, that's what I would say kind of about the dairy. The other thing I would say is, I know Basics in particular has some really good coconut and almond milk yogurts, and so those are good too. They're fantastic. Be careful though, because if you look at the line of like the more traditional like Yoplait or Dannon or some of those, I'm not talking to go buy like the Oreo sprinkle yogurt. Like that's not the yogurt that I mean. You know what I mean? Just like I'm just talking like plain yogurt, and you could put a plop of that in your smoothie with your berries or whatever. But a lot of those, and like light yogurts is probably the thing that I wish people would not eat anymore, because there's, and then we haven't even talked about like artificial sugars, but that's in all that stuff then too. I honestly would rather you have some just plain regular sugar, not a lot of it, but a little bit of it. Or honey or maple syrup, because those are in a pretty raw form. We get like usually 5 pounds at a time of just raw cane sugar, and so we just have that at home. And so if I want to sprinkle a little bit of that on my oatmeal or put it in my coffee, then I could. We do local honey and maple syrup.
She has a question.
Question? Okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, what do you think of all this almond milk and, the different kind of
It's not milk.
oat milk?
I think the brand varies a lot. It's not milk. I know, and there's a whole like thing about like, do we call it milk or whatever? So let's just call it milk for now. But I think with the advent of a lot of dairy sensitivities, that's kind of what's come up. And so I don't think that movement's all bad, but I would say a lot of those then all of a sudden, so there's like fresh pressed, let's say almond or coconut milk, which you can find at some places. And then there's the chocolatey, vanilla, sugar-filled, whatever. Yeah, that it tastes amazing, but you're just drinking sugar. So if you're going to get an almond or coconut milk, you want to get one, again, short ingredient list, like almonds, water, or sometimes they have gargum in to keep the like thickeners. That's okay. Carrageenan, I don't love that. So if you see that on the back,
What is that?
Carrageenan, it's called. It's an additional like chemical. I don't like that. Again, short ingredient list. So we use at home the cans of coconut milk. Those are great. Some of those will separate whether or not they have gargum in them, and some of them are like nice and creamy. They're pretty high in calories. If you're watching calories, maybe that's not something you would like, drink a glass of. I love the idea of a cup of coffee with a spoonful of that like really rich coconut milk in there though, and maybe a little bit of local raw honey. That's one of the things that I would say there. You can also, if you're making like a smoothie, I'll use maybe a tablespoon or two of that coconut milk and then the rest water, because it all just kind of like blends together. So I love the cans of coconut milk. I think those are good. The rest of them, yeah, the brand varies. I can't speak to like particular brands, but like some are okay and others still have this long list of stuff. And so those are the ones that I would kind of stay away from. But I'm generally okay with those, but just not the sugar sweetened ones. But not the diet ones either, you guys. Like that's the stuff that has like sucralose and like all the pretend sugars in them. And those long term, your body does not recognize those as foods. And the more sweet stuff that we have, even if it's diet sugars, the more you're going to crave. If you're drinking a diet soda, there's tons of research out there about people drink more diet soda and then you crave like a cookie with it or a cookie after or whatever. And so it's an addiction. And so those are chemicals, just like when you go get fast food or you get a burger or McDonald's fries or whatever. McDonald's fries have 18 ingredients in them. They're not just, potatoes and oil. And so there's lots of stuff in there. And so, but it's like really addicting because you want more. Oh, and they're like super salty, so then you want more, yeah.
So what's the best way to change your body from eating so bad to eating switching to the whole
Yeah.
foods? Will there be symptoms that you might go through, or?
Yeah, so I do when I work with people, I do a 15-point symptom checklist when everybody comes in, because everybody's complaining of the same stuff. Like it's generally the same. It's skin issues, sleeping, fatigue, like just being tired is the number one thing that people come to me with. It's not weight loss. It's like, I'm just so tired. And because they're so tired, they don't know where to start because everything's kind of overwhelming. I do, if they have an autoimmune disease, we do the markers for that and just kind of, what their symptoms are. Maybe it's joint pain or, a lot of times fatigue with that too. Bloating, constipation, digestive disorders. So that's one of the symptoms I see a lot. Trying to think of the other ones that I have on there. One of the ones that I have that's a little bit more just kind of like mental health related, that's a checklist item, is just like sense of overwhelm, stress eating patterns. Some people have food anxiety, like they're afraid to eat because when they eat, they feel horrible and they don't know what it is. And they don't know what they're eating that's making them feel yucky. And so they're literally afraid to eat every day. And then that's, of course, a problem too. I see a lot of women that don't eat enough. And so it's getting back to, eating whole foods, eating enough of them. And like I said, you're not going to overeat that chicken breast or the apples or the carrots probably. And so that's a good spot to do. What I try to do with people is to get people to start simple and, create maybe I give people meal plans so they don't have to think the first couple months. I just kind of do that all. And some of these recipes are excerpts from those. But, maybe you start with something like just one of your meals. Like I'm going to try to eat a whole food breakfast or lunch or dinner, but not all of them, because it's very overwhelming if you're not used to eating that way. You're like, I'm just going to pick one meal, and I gave you a couple recipes today. You can look at those, and I'm just going to eat something like that. And then I'm not going to worry about the rest, like for a while. I'm just going to, like, once I get that down, then maybe I'll, add another one. Was there another question? Yeah.
Yeah, going back to the raw milk, I grew up on a dairy farm, and we pasteurized 3-gallon for the house use. And because raw milk can be dangerous for people with autoimmune diseases or weakened systems, people with diabetes, cancer, there is the risk of E. coli, salmonella,
yep, all the bacteria in there.
Yep. Because pasteurizing kills the bacteria.
Right. But it's the difference of you pasteurizing that at your farm and in a big, factory. That, I think that's the stuff too.
I just don't see recommending drinking raw milk. I just don't. But
yeah, I think
it's their own.
Yeah, it depends on your body, I think too. And with everything, I always tell people to try something and see how you feel. So I always ask people when they come in, like, how do you feel? Like, after you drink that, or now that you're eating a little bit differently, how do you feel? A lot of times I get people that after a couple months, they say, I don't feel like I'm on a diet. Like, I feel great, and like I could eat like this for the rest of my life. Bingo, that's it. That's what we want. I'm trying to give you ideas of things that aren't something that you do for 30 days or something you do for 60 days, just something you do for the rest of your life. Again, 80-20, like for the most part. So, yeah. Snacking, let's talk about that too. Snacking is a slippery slope, and so when I create meals plans for people, that is the hardest change for people, especially women. Most women that I see are I'll say, well, what do you eat for breakfast? Well, I don't really eat breakfast, which I'll get to that in a second too, because that's not all bad either. If you're not hungry, don't eat. But they'll say, well, I'm a grazer. That's what I hear. Like, I'm a grazer. I have crackers and then cheese and then apples, and then I grab this and then I quick grab a sandwich and then I microwave that. It's just because there's probably no like pre-planning. So that's one of the biggest things, one of the keys to success when I work with people is planning ahead. So I batch cook our meals at home on Sundays, our beef stew, our chicken soup, whatever. Do I want to? Not really. I don't usually feel like it. But I do because I'm busy during the week and I know that will contribute to my success. Also, man, how easy is it before I leave for the morning to like grab my stuff ready to go? I might like cook and freeze, chicken, ground beef, things like that we can use throughout the week. But for your digestion cycle, for rest and digestion cycle, your body doesn't want to be digesting food all day long if you're snacking all day long. You don't need to eat 7 or 8 times a day. You have to listen to your body. If you have insulin-dependent diabetes, again, I would work with you on that individually, because maybe that's different for you. But I'd rather see you eat like 3 meals a day. Like, again, back to basics and eat kind of 3 meals a day. A lot of times what I do for people is like 3 meals a day and then maybe like some sort of a smoothie, like a protein smoothie or something like that. Because a lot of times there's that time between, depending on what time you eat lunch and what time you eat dinner, that could be like 6 or 7 hours, and that's a lot of times, that's too long. Your blood sugar can kind of go up and down and crash. So I a lot of times do 3 meals in a smoothie. But your snacks are less likely to be nutrition dense, and they're more likely to be hyperpalatable, salty, sugary, yummy, and so you're more likely to eat lots of them. Do you know what a serving size of Doritos is?
12 chips. 5.
It's 12. It's 12. There's like 12 chips. It's not a lot or whatever. So, yeah. Question?
What can you say about bread? Every grocery store has, I think, 2,000 kinds of bread.
It's all processed.
Yeah. I would say, in my mind, bread of most kinds, in my mind, is one of those just like once in a while things. Like, I don't put it in a staple part of people's diet. I just don't. It's a slippery slope with what's in there. If you are at home culturing, making your own sourdough bread, I think that's great. Most of us are not doing that though, and so I think that's all right. I don't know still about having that every day. It's very calorie dense and it's more processed. I'd rather have you get your carbohydrates from a sweet potato, a white potato, a plantain. Has anybody had plantains before? Do you know what I'm talking about?
They look like bananas.
They look like bananas, but they're not. They're not as sweet as bananas. Basics has them regularly. I get them every week. Or butternut squash or celery or like beets or something like that. So I'd rather, bread is still made in a factoring kind of process. So if it's easier, then I would tell you like nix the bread, other than like once. But that's probably like a big overhaul for people if you're used to having grilled cheese or a sandwich for lunch. And so then it's like, well, what do I have? If I don't have a sandwich, like what do I have for lunch? So I brought some ideas for you today too. But like then I might tell you something like, salads, but I don't mean like iceberg lettuce and a couple tomatoes and a cucumber. Like that is not going to hold anybody over. I mean like some really nice like dark or red like leafy greens. I mean some fruit, some nuts, some seeds, some chicken, some vinegar and oil, like load up like a loaded salad. Soups, I love soups for lunch because they keep really well. So I'm talking like chicken vegetable soup or a chili or a beef stew. All of those. So, we're used to bread. And there's all these like healthy breads out there. I almost think those are worse than some of the original breads. So I just would say mostly not. I think once in a while, yeah. Again, in a really good sourdough from like a local, bakery would be great. But I wouldn't. It's just it's hard not to eat that every day or eat a lot of it because it tastes good. And so I think bread is really hyper palatable too. So I would just make it one of those once in a while things.
So would it be better to get bread from a bakery? More of a fresh bread versus?
I think it depends because some of the bakery breads that I see have long ingredient lists too, and so it's really hard. I'm trying to think there was a local place I was thinking of. Don't you guys carry a local sourdough too, don't you?
Yeah, a couple different.
There's a couple, yeah. I prefer that people get most of their complex carbohydrates not from grains in general, and so that's where I'm coming with that. I think some, like an oatmeal, raw oats, or some rice once in a while, but I still would rather you get your carbohydrates from fruits and veggies. So I don't think it means like none of the rest, but I think just a little bit more limited, or maybe it's like once a day you're having something, but I'd rather have you get them from fruits and veggies because you're going to get way more vitamins and minerals and things from your fruits and veggies than you will even from a local bread, like for sure. But maybe that's your 20% of your, when I talk 80-20, maybe that's your 20% is that sourdough bread or, whatever.
One time I looked at the ingredients of a bread that touted to be high fiber, extra healthy.
Yep.
And I was reading the ingredients and there was something I didn't recognize. And when I went home and looked it up, it was wood pulp.
Yeah.
And this was in the bread. And it had, I guess wood pulp would be high in fiber.
Yeah, right. That'll do it. Yeah.
And so you really do. If you can't read those ingredients, that's one of the first things.
If you don't know what it is.
If I don't understand what the words mean, I don't buy it.
No. Yeah. That's what I'm talking about with the bars and the cereals and the breads is that they have stuff in there and they will say high fiber, low calorie. I don't care. I honestly don't care what the calories are in any of that stuff. Because again, if you're eating whole foods, you're not going to overeat and it doesn't matter and you shouldn't have to count calories. Does portion size matter? Absolutely, it does. But if you're eating whole foods, you're probably just not going to eat a lot of it and you're getting so much, nutrition. That's one of the things I have people tell me after a couple months of working with me and doing like a meal plan. They're like, I had one woman tell me she's like, she's young gal, and she said, my boyfriend tells me he can't, like I'm too much now because she's so tired all the time, and now she can't fall asleep actually. Now she's got the opposite problem. She has so much energy. Because she's eating so well, she's actually like feeding her brain like some of these some of these nutrients and vitamins too. Did I miss a question?
I have to chuckle because when you said there's wood pulp in that, well, and you had made a comment about Parmesan cheese and it's harder and stuff. So are you going to say something?
No, go ahead. I know what you're going to say. Yeah.
Okay, so when this lady is talking about Parmesan cheese, it's like the real cheese, not the Parmesan that you have that has the wood pulp in it too.
That's what it is.
So it doesn't
cake. It's an anti-caking agent. Correct. Yep.
So be careful with that.
Yeah, craft Parmesan versus, so we were talking about cheese before, which is lovely. But if you get like a wedge of Parmesan and kind of grate it yourself as opposed to, because there's wood pulp in that. It's an anti-caking agent. So again, we do lots of things to our food to make it like pretty and easy to use. And even the coconut milk thing, actually, like I don't have an issue with gar gum, but we put gar gum in that cans of coconut milk to make it look pretty when you open the can. Because the ones without gar gum, it looks weird. Like it looks chunky. Like there's like this solid, like coconut substance in there, and then there's this water. But all you gotta do is like chunk it up, mix it together, throw it in the microwave. But we do a lot of things because, even like when you go to a traditional grocery store and get apples, they have a low coating of wax on them. So they look shiny and pretty, If you get apples from an apple orchard, if you've done that before, I'm sure most of you have, apples come in all shapes and sizes and they're not ultra glistening, shiny. But so it's just like, how can we remove some of the steps in that process and just kind of go back to basics? The really cool thing about going to a whole food diet is it reduces your decision fatigue of what to eat. Because you have now there's plenty of choices left, but you have now narrowed your choices a little bit. Fruits, veggies, eggs, nuts and seeds, meats, poultry, and fish. Oh, okay. So then when you go to the store, you're going to shop the perimeter. That's going to be 80% of probably what you get. And so, but then it kind of limits yourself in deciding kind of what to eat, and you don't, because sometimes it's hard to decide what to eat. And do you ever like just kind of open the fridge and be like, you wait for something to make itself or jump out at you or whatever? And that's why a lot of people do drive-thrus or do whatever. And I am not standing here telling you to never go to Culver's for the rest of your life. I'm just saying that should be the exception and not the rule, not your regular, your regular lunch. So let me give you an example of like a menu of like something you might eat throughout the day that would be all whole foods based. So this is like maybe an example of what I might eat in a day. So breakfast, I might saute like a chicken or a ground turkey or a ground chicken with maybe some kale or like green vegetables, whatever I have laying around. And then maybe I have a berry smoothie with it. So that could be like a breakfast. Lunch, how about a big shrimp salad? Grilled shrimp, maybe with some kind of nuts or seeds, maybe you, lots of different greens, and then like whatever vegetables I have laying around, whatever I like shredded carrots or cucumbers, tomatoes, peppers, whatever, it doesn't matter, like pick the vegetables that you like. Dinner maybe is a nice big sweet potato with maybe a little bit of honey or maple syrup, and a steak maybe, or pork tenderloin or a pork chop, and then maybe some steamed broccoli or cauliflower. So that's what I'm talking about. That would be maybe the course of like a day of maybe what menu would look like. Those are basic foods. They don't take a lot of prep. That's kind of the idea. So we have the extras here. Can somebody help me pass out recipes? And then why don't I walk through what I brought for you for recipes? You guys can ask me any questions.
What do you think about butter?
I think butter's, I don't like butter, but that's just my personal preference. But I think it's great. Yep. Yeah, we didn't even talk about butter as a, but yeah, that's a pretty natural soup. What I don't like though is the buttery spreads. So get the real butter, not the like.
Cream and salt.
Yeah, not the, correct, right. Yep, butter, cream, salt, cream and salt, not the spreads with all the things. Because those are made to kind of sound healthier, but again, the ingredient list on there will be all, again, that was made in a factory, not from a farm. So, yeah.
I have a question. So you said that for your supper you did steak. In my household,
Or like a pork chop.
We have like somebody with high cholesterol and we're staying away from red meats.
Yeah, I think that's one of those sort of assumptions. And so I push people away from that actually. And so inflammation in your body, whether it be cholesterol, blood pressure, any disease is inflammation, comes from more processed foods, and that comes from our additional sugars and breads and all these like diet foods. And so when I work with people, and if you were to see maybe a meal plan that I would create, you will see a lot of meat in there, honestly, like a lot of beef and pork and whatever. But then when I measure results like later, 3-6 months later, I think that's a huge misnomer. I think we're doing ourselves a disservice by being afraid of beef and pork and some of those things. But see, then I have people that are like, they're not eating steak, but instead then they're eating the diet low-fat cereals and bars and like some of that stuff. And so I'd honestly rather you just have a steak. And it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't need to be like a pound or whatever, but like 4 ounce, like a 4 to 5 ounce steaks, pork chop, whatever.
Should one meal be bigger than the other? Like someone recently told me that you should eat your biggest meal at lunch.
We've heard that. Yeah. It really doesn't matter. I don't think you want any one meal like huge and the rest of them small, just for digestion perspective. And people are like, oh, eat more in the morning, or don't eat before you go to bed, or don't, we put so many rules on ourselves, just like eat 3 meals and eat some whole foods and call it a day, When I do, it depends on the calories I do for people, but let's say, I might do like 400 to 500 calories per meal, breakfast, lunch, dinner, plus that smoothie, which is like 300 or 400 calories, let's say. When I create meal plans for people, they're pretty even. But I also work with people if they're like, you know what, I'm not really hungry in the morning when I wake up. So then we talk about, this was a whole nother topic, but intermittent fasting, where we talk about like, if you're not hungry, don't eat. I'm not hungry in the morning. I'm not hungry till like at least 11. Depending on what my schedule is, then I will eat or in between clients or whatever. But yeah, if you're not, some people will get up and just have a cup of coffee for a few hours and then eat later, like brunch time. That's fine.
So this new diet they have where you fast, like you only eat from, like you say, your first meal would be at 11?
Mm-hmm.
And then you'd have to eat before 6 or 7 o'clock.
So-
What do you think of?
You got to do what works for you. So I will tell you that intermittent fasting for me for years helped my stomach a lot. And so the more food that I eat closer together, the worse I feel. And so that's me, that might not be you. I did really well when I was eating a meal at like 12. We eat later because I'm home later, but like 12, 4, and 8 is when I was eating. But for you, that could be 11, 3, and 7 or whatever. You need time for your gut to kind of like rest and digest. Intermittent fasting, there's health benefits to that, and there's some piece of like caloric restriction there. I've had multiple friends who've done intermittent fasting, or they call it intermittent fasting, but then what they do is they don't eat till 2 or 3 o'clock, and then they go to Culver's and eat, 9 hamburgers. No. So if you are eating, again, back to the whole foods though, if you're eating whole foods, a piece of a gentle intermittent fasting can be great. A traditional gentle intermittent fast is what we call 16-8. And so when I talked about 12-4-8, a lot of times it's like that 8-hour eating window. But don't put a lot of rules around it. Like, listen to your body. If you're hungry, eat. Eat a meal, not a snack, though. Like, if you're hungry, sit down and eat like a really well-balanced meal, and then eat when you're hungry again. And like, probably that'll be 3 or 4 hours from now, But I think a lot of us snack throughout the day, and we really never get full. We're subsiding our hunger, but we're just like quick feeding it, but we're not really, we're not getting a lot of nutrition, and then you're not really filling up. I don't mean eat till you're overfull, but intermittent fasting has some great health benefits, but it might not be for everybody, and but you have to see what works for you. So you just listen to body, and eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full.
I just wanted to mention, one thing you haven't mentioned is hydration. And I think a lot of people think they're hungry, but they're really thirsty. So I don't know if
half your body weight in ounces is a good place to start. So if you weigh 180 pounds, that'd be 90 ounces. Coffee doesn't count. Smoothies don't count. Your Frappuccino doesn't count. Mostly water. Herbal tea is great. Even like your water with like not like Gatorade that you purchased, but like some really good, like Basics had those, and I have those too, like those really good like electrolytes maybe that you put in your water, or little packets, or squeeze a lemon or lime, or a lot of people put like fruit in their waters, like strawberry, cucumber. Oh, that's great. Let's call it 99% water, but half your body weight in ounces. So if you can start with that, most people that I work with, and that's one of the hardest things for me to do, probably because I'm talking all day.
Constantly.
Yeah, what?
I'll be running to the bathroom constantly.
But I don't, because your body
assimilates like after a while. I mean, everybody's body is different, but yeah, half your body weight in ounces is a good place to start. And then you ask yourself, are you at an ideal body weight? Because then if someone comes to me who's 260 pounds and I say you need to drink 130 ounces of water, that'd be a good place to start. They're like, what? Like that so much. And I'll say, well, like at what weight do you feel most comfortable in your body? And they'll say 180 pounds or 190 pounds. And I'm like, well, we wouldn't know to drink so much water. Gonna help you drop some weight, and then you don't have to drink as much water. Yeah, let's do that, So, and again, you don't have to be overly rigid about it. Some people travel with like these big, I hate the big jugs because I just don't want to carry it, but like with all the markers on, you do whatever. I also, like a whole nother thing is I tell people to drink between meals, not with. When you drink tons of water right before your meal, you're lowering your stomach acid, and it makes it hard to digest your food. And so I think lots of diet programs, though, out there will say, like, drink a whole bunch of water, and then you'll be full, and then you'll try to eat. But then you're going to have a hard time digesting your food. And so I'm not saying you can't have a drink with dinner or lunch or breakfast or whatever, or your cup of coffee, but like drink 80% of your beverages between your meals, like I'm doing here, not with them. And then that will help hydrate. But, hydration's huge. And like, as a country, we're like not great at that, or we get soda or coffee or something else.
So many people talk about how hard it is for them to drink water and to get the recommended amount of water in each day. But you kind of have to play around a little bit with it. Like I see you're using a straw. For me personally, my water goes down much easier and quicker with a straw.
Me too.
I've also learned through personal experience, I prefer my water at room temperature.
And I prefer mine cold. Yeah, so it doesn't matter, like how it works. Some people will do the herbal teas too. Again, a plain nice herbal tea is totally fine, maybe at night, but then maybe that's another like 12 ounces for you. I have to have a straw, and a lot of times I am driving or I'm talking with people and I spill on myself, so like I have to have straw, and like it just tastes better to me, and mine has to be iced, and I need a little flavor in mine too. So I like lemon or lime or whatever.
You can make a game out of it too, like by 10 o'clock, I'm
Yep.
gonna have so many ounces
Yep.
done.
Try to front load your water, like try to drink more, then you won't be up in the middle of the night going to the bathroom. So I know we're at time, and I don't care if I say a little extra, but let me just go through the recipes a little bit for you, and then if anybody has questions after, I'll let you know. I know we could probably hang out and talk about this for 10 hours. So the first recipe you have in your packet is just it's chicken soup. Pretty easy. And any of those vegetables I have in there, you can use something different if you want. That's just what I have in here. I have all the macronutrients listed for you, so I have all the nutritional information there. Fat, carbohydrates, fiber, protein. So if that's something that you're keeping track of, then that's on there for you.
Is the chicken breast cooked before?
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. You can toss it all in raw, like in a crock pot, and just cook it all at once, or you can cook it it doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
And in the directions it says, except sweet potato black.
Oh yeah, I should have taken that out. That's a whole nother topic is to talk about. That should have been taken out, sorry. I use sweet potato glass noodles instead of regular pasta for people with gluten-free diets, and so, but just skip, don't even think about the noodles there and just do veggies. Then there's a bell pepper spinach egg bake. Again, pick some vegetables and some eggs, and you're just gonna kind of bake that. You know, it's like a quiche, like a crustless quiche, like that idea. Shepherd's pie, that's like a real tradition. That freezes great too, if you wanna make that. So,
Can I ask you what I see it in a couple of
coconut aminos? Ooh, that's like one of my favorite ingredients. So, Basics has that, but Woodman's has that. Festival have that. Super easy. It's like all over the place now. It's a soy sauce substitute, and it's made from coconuts, but it doesn't taste coconutty at all. That's what we mostly have in our house. Soy, I'm okay with some soy, but I pull those out for people with autoimmune disease, and so I use coconut aminos, it has a great flavor. It's almost like a little bit sweeter, but it's a really good soy sauce.
It's a liquid.
It's a liquid. It looks just like soy sauce. Yeah. Trade Secret, I think, is a brand. I forget what some of the other ones are. Yeah. It's right by the soy sauce. Yep. And there's like a garlic one, a teriyaki one. Like there's a couple different ones. Super good. So, if I am working with young women of childbearing age, I just don't do a lot of soy. Like a little bit I do in like a whole form, maybe a soybean or something like that. But yeah, I love coconut aminos, so that's something probably a little bit different. If you don't want to do that, use your soy sauce. I mean, like the shepherd's pie is like a teaspoon, so it's not that big a deal. If you want to do sweet potatoes instead of white potatoes on your shepherd's pie, you could do that too. Turkey and vegetable bake. You could use butternut squash in here, plantains or sweet potatoes. It's just the idea of this one pot saute thing. Like you're getting like a root vegetable. I mean, you could use parsnips or anything you want. You're chopping up a root vegetable, some ground chicken, turkey, pork, and then some sort of green vegetable. I like kale, but you don't have to do that. You could put celery in there. You could put Brussels sprouts in there. You could whatever. So think of these menus as like a little bit of a guide, though. Like you don't have to follow it exactly, but it's the idea. And you'll see most of my recipes here are like 6 ingredients or less. Like they're pretty simple. They're like throw together stuff because that's what most of us are able to do.
I have a question. All right, let's say you have a can of green beans that you want to put.
Yep.
If you drain that or maybe rinse.
Better. It's better.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. Because you're rinsing the salt out there, and then some of the beans have like lectins, which sometimes are really hard for digestion too. But so if I'm using beans in my chili, I just rinse them first. Okay. Yeah. Zuppa Toscana. So if you've been to Olive Garden, this is the Zuppa Toscana recipe. It's my version of it. Like I just kind of healthified it a little bit too. So some ground meat, potatoes. Has anybody heard of celery root or celiac? That's one of my favorite things to use in this soup instead of potatoes. So Basics has that regularly. It's a root vegetable. It's sort of ugly, honestly. Looks like a turnip, kind of. Celiac or celery root.
I've heard of it.
And so it has pot marks.
Yeah.
Like somebody had acne really
Yeah,
bad.
when I tell people what it tastes like, it is like if a white potato and celery got married, that would be their offspring. That's what it tastes like. Has the texture of a white potato, so I have people do mashed potatoes. I do mashed celery root instead sometimes. It's less calorically dense too. And it tastes like very mild celery. So if you don't like celery at all, you might still like celery root. And it's got just a really nice texture. So it's good in soups, gives additional flavor. Hamburger soup, another soup idea. Again, you guys, this is super easy. This is your ground beef, your beef stock, and some vegetables.
That's the one with the green beans.
Yeah, green beans, perfect. Yep. To liven things up, a chicken teriyaki stir fry. Bok choy, have you had bok choy before? Maybe that's a new, that's in the cabbage family, but milder. I have pineapple in there. You can serve that with rice or not. Roasted root vegetables, that's really good with like a small steak or a couple chicken thighs or a pork chop. Beets, sweet potatoes, carrots, you're just chopping them up, throw them in a pan with a little bit of, I love like a truffle oil, but a really good olive oil, some sea salt, and you're good to go. That's a really good side.
Is it better, you were talking about sauteing and bacon grease or doing the vegetables?
Roasting is great. Yeah, you get, I mean, all of those are really fine. I think if you're not frying something or if you're not, I think it's fine. So what I like to have with those roasted root vegetables is the one after that, the maple balsamic pork tenderloin. And you're just marinating this in a little bit of garlic, maple syrup, and that coconut aminos that I was talking about before. That coconut aminos, you guys, is such a great marinade for chicken, pork, beef. If I am like stuck on a recipe, I literally just put a quarter or half a cup of that in a freezer bag with whatever my meat is, and then we just grill it. It takes like 5 minutes, and it just gives perfect flavor, and you don't have to worry about a recipe or anything else to add.
Could you throw a whole pork tenderloin in a crock pot?
Yep, you could do it that way too. Yep. Chicken apple sausage, so like that's one of the breakfast items I do for people often because a lot of times we don't get enough protein for breakfast. We're eating cereal or a bagel or a piece of toast or something like that, and so we might do like a fruit smoothie or some fresh fruit with like a chicken sausage. And again, not a lot, but it's like maybe 4 ounces or 2 little 2-ounce ones. Ground chicken, rosemary, 2 apples. You're like, what? You're shredding an apple in there. It's kind of like a sweet salty combination. If you don't want that, you can leave it out. So those are just kind of a handful of ideas of recipes, like whole food ideas. I gave you kind of a sample of maybe, like what eat during the day. Salads and soups are great for lunch ideas. I think there's a million different salad soup recipes. You can mix things up. And then dinners, I love the idea of like pick a protein, pick like a healthy carbohydrate and like a vegetable. Breakfast is usually the hardest for people, breakfast and snacks. I think that's when you're usually like kind of grab and go. But so that's when I put this like chicken sausage in here or something like that. Or honestly, seriously, a couple strips of bacon. One of the breakfasts I have for people that people are like thrown off a little bit is I do them a baked sweet potato with a little bit of cinnamon and maple syrup or shredded coconut and a couple strips of bacon. Or fry a couple eggs with it. You're getting some protein, some good fats. But we're probably not used to having a baked sweet potato for breakfast, but there's no reason you can't. That's one of the other things I help people relanguage is instead of breakfast, lunch, dinner, I just think of it my first meal of the day, my second meal of the day, my third meal of the day. Your first meal can be chicken soup. It doesn't have to be, a toaster strudel or whatever. So.
What time are you at Basics tomorrow?
12:30. Yep. And they can just show up, right? Like we didn't have to register. It's right in the community room. And we'll do supplements, and then Amber usually has like some cool free samples or refreshments or something.
If we wanted more recipes, or a cookbook or a website you would recommend?
So I have folders here if you guys want. I didn't think 20 people were going to come, so I don't know if I have enough, but I have quite a few. I have information in there, or if you just want like a rack card. On my website, I have meal plans that you can purchase. And then on my blog and my Facebook site, I have recipes like all the time. So if you look back over the last couple of years, I would do like a recipe in a month, and like I wrote an article about vitamin D this month, and before that, immune system or whatever, and then I usually attach a recipe to it.
So it's your blog.
This year, what I'm doing is I'm talking about a supplement of the month, actually. And so I'm doing supplements. The year before, I did like lunches. The year before that, I did smoothies. Or like I just kind of try to pick a theme, but there's tons on the blog. If you go on the website, there's a little button at the upper right, and it just says blog. If you just click on there, you can subscribe to it if you want. I don't send tons of emails or anything like that. So here's these if anybody wants, totally optional. These are in the big folders, but if you just want these, I have those too.
I get some of the salads at Basic.
Yeah.
That has not mayonnaise, but veganese in it.
Oh, yeah.
What is
Yeah,
that?
that's, it's without egg.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, egg or like some mayo actually is like dairy, but yeah, I like that one too.
Yeah.
Yep, Primal Kitchen makes a good vegan mayo too, and so I get that. Like if I'm gonna use mayonnaise and something, that's what I get more because I have issues with eggs, so yeah, so that's fine too. I have these too. If you didn't get a folder and you want info, you can grab one of these too. But yeah, there's a website, I have a Facebook page. My Facebook page I put on, I post recipes, like I bet you 5 or 6 recipes a week too. But yeah, there's information kind of on the blog there. There's information on coaching there, just lots of different things. So I do free consults with anybody, phone consults. So if you just want to call me and talk a little bit and brainstorm something that you need help with, I can chat with you for a little bit, and then if you ever want to work with me one-on-one, I'm open for that too. January is always really busy for me because everyone has their New Year's resolutions. I don't hear from anyone in December. And then no one cares. No one cares at all. So I never even talk about food in December. Like nobody wants to. And then around December 27th or 28th, like my email flooded because they're like, I don't feel good, I ate so many Christmas cookies or whatever. So, well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Sarah, very much.